Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for swinging by the channel and spending some time with me today. Always thankful for that. Guys, today we're going to be having a discussion on what the heck has happened to Ranger Boat Company and what's happened to all the Ranger pros. And I'm going to give you guys sort of my opinion on this. You know, I was with Ranger from 1985 until 2015 or 16, something like that, for a long time. And I'm sort of going to give you my perspective on it. But more importantly, I want to hear your guys' opinion. I think a lot of people that watch the channel follow this. And after the video today, after you hear what's going on with it, I'd just be curious to hear what you guys think's the deal happening with Ranger right here. So get into that in today's video. Also, guys, two quick housekeeping tips before we get started here. Just like to invite everybody, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, all you got to do is go to my Facebook page, Randy Blockett Professional Angler. Shoot me a private message and I'll give you the details. And also, we've only got a couple more days left in the April sale on my Solar Bat Series RB2 and RB3 series sunglasses. If you get a pair by the end of the month, into April, get them at 30% off. So I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description if you guys would like to get you a pair. I think you guys will really like them. So, okay, let's talk about this, guys. Now, I want to sort of preface, I'm going to give you guys a little history lesson, you know, behind Ranger and sort of bring it up to the future here. Ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted a Ranger boat because Ranger sponsored Bassmaster back in the early days. When I started reading Bassmaster magazine in the 70s, Ranger Boat was the sponsor of Bassmaster, and they were for decades after that. They were associated with Bassmaster. And throughout, the 70s and 80s, when I was, in my teens and early 20s, all the guys I really looked up to in the sport, like, Roland Martin, Hank Parker, Bill Dance, Basil Bacon, just a bunch of the hammers back in the day, Jimmy Houston, they all ran Ranger bass boats. And it was the cool boat to have. I mean, that was just the deal because Ranger forced the 9 of wood, the whole deal. It was just a big thing. So I always had junky boats. I mean, I had, boats that I could, I bought all my boats between the time I got my first boat in the late 70s up until 1985. They were all, I spent between $1,000 and $5,000 on them, based upon how much money I could save up to get it. But I had, just old used boats. So anyway, what happened in 1984, that was the first year I fished the Redman Tournament Trail, which is now the BFL circuit, it has the All-American. And I was able to qualify for the Redman All-American back in 1984, the tournament Shaw Grigsby won $100,000 in. And obviously that was sponsored by Ranger Boats. And after I got back from that tournament, the next year was my first year fishing the Bassmaster tournament circuit. That was my rookie year in the 1985-86 season. It used to be split. It used to be the 1986 season actually started in the fall of 1985. So that's when I started. So anyway, the summer before that, out of the blue, I got a call from Nina Wood, Forrest Wood's wife, Nina Wood, who ran back in the mid 80s, she ran the Ranger Boats pro staff. And she goes, Randy, this is Nina Wood. And it's like when I heard her say that, I'll never forget this. I was actually in Bass Pro Shop here in Springfield in 1984. I called, actually there wasn't cell phones back there, but I called home. I had to talk to my mom and dad about something, and they said that Nina Wood had called. So I called Nina Wood back on a payphone, and I didn't know what was going on. She goes, Randy, this is Nina Wood. She goes, I just want to let you know, we watched you down at the Redman All-American, saw your fish in the Bassmaster tournaments, and we wanted to know if you'd like to be sponsored by Ranger Boats. And my jaw liked to hit the floor. It's like, yes, sign me up immediately. So anyway, from 1984, I believed up until, like I said, 2015 or 16, I was with Ranger Boats. Now, I'll get to what's happened since then. But anyway, what happened is from about 1986 up until the late 80s and early 90s, when Forrest and Nina Wood sold Ranger Boats, I would go down there to flipping all the time. It's like either getting my boat or doing this and that. And I'd go in there, and every time I went down there, Forrest and Nina would be there to greet me. I'd get to go in Forrest's office there, Forrest Wood's office, and get to hang out and talk to Forrest. And Nina would come in there, and she was a big bowler, and so was I. So Nina bowled in leagues there in Flippin, Arkansas. So we talk about bowling all the time. We talk about fishing with Forrest. And it was just great. I mean, I'm sitting in there in the office with Forrest Wood hanging out with him. And I felt like so much of the Ranger family. And at the time, Ranger, what they do is they had the program I was on is they had a thing called a demo boat program where they let you use a boat for nothing for a whole year. And at the end of the year, you had to sell it and pay it back. But that basically you got to fish out of a boat for free every year because you didn't have a boat payment. You didn't have to pay anything. You just had to sell it at the end of the year and give them the money back. And on top of that, I had a financial retainer that I got from them, an annual financial retainer. This went on, up until, the time I'm getting ready to talk about. But anyway, what happened was after Forrest and Nina Wood sold Ranger, which broke my heart that they did back in the late 80s and early 90s, it never was the same. Ranger sold, it traded hands 3 or 4 different times. Different places bought it out. And every time another company bought Ranger out, there would be a little bit more of a disconnect between the old guard like myself and the new management. And it just was never the same. And eventually what happened in 2010, I had to sit out during the 2010 season because my mom had a stroke and I couldn't be away from home. So it like to kill me, but I had to quit fishing in 2010. I informed Ranger of that, and I was planning on coming back as soon as I could. So the next season, after my mom, started recuperating from her stroke, I was ready to fish the 2011 season. And when I came back to Ranger, said I'm ready to go, they didn't want to sponsor me anymore. And they didn't really give any reason other than that. They said that I could use a boat, but the financial retainer was gone, and I was like, I was extremely disappointed that I'd been in that position with Ranger for so many years, and then I had a hardship case with my mom, and when I come back, they didn't have my back and just basically, threw me to the side of the curb. But anyway, I stayed with them for a few more years, just using the boat. And then what happened when Bass Pro Shop bought them out? I can't remember when this was. It's been 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. They basically threw all the Ranger pros under the bus. At the time I was with them towards the end of that period, Ranger they were sponsoring like 50 or 60 pros. They basically got rid of all of us. All the guys like myself that had been with the company forever, we sort of got thrown under the bus. There's a management change. I understand they have different directions they want to go into. And, so I left Ranger. I'm now with Skeeter, which I'm extremely happy. I've never been more happy with a boat company in my life. I absolutely love my Skeeter. But the point is after that happened, after Bass Pro Shop bought them out, they just sort of fell off the face of the earth. It's like the tournaments I went to, you didn't see as many Rangers. You didn't hear people talking about Rangers. They only had a handful of pros. There was just a handful of the people survived that cut that they had, when Bass Pro bought it out. But the days of the powerhouse Ranger pro staff was gone. I mean, they had the biggest pro staff for decades and decades and decades in the sport. And when after a series of buying and selling, different companies buying them, and Bass Pro Shop bought them out, it became unrecognizable. And the Ranger boat company that I knew and loved when Forrest and Nina Wood owned it no longer existed. So I didn't see the company in the same light because that energy of Forrest and Nina Wood and the tradition and the heritage of Ranger boats was gone. It became sort of a corporate conglomerate. But now, the reason I want to do this video is I just saw yesterday that Ranger, they laid off like 180 people from their facility. And like I said, I don't see hardly anyone fishing out of Ranger boats anymore. I don't understand it. And one of the questions I have for you guys, what is going on? Well, how did a company like Ranger Boats, that used to be the #1 boat company, arguably, undisputedly for decades, how did they get from that position to the position where they are now, where I just don't see anybody using them anymore? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what has happened, and I would just be curious to know, some people out there that may have a better grasp on this topic than I do, what you guys think had happened. So anyway, drop some comments, guys. Let me know what you think's going on. Why has Ranger, became a lesser and lesser and lesser player in the sport year after year after year? Why don't they have the title sponsorships of Bassmaster or other tournament organizations like they did for decades? You know, they used to provide, Ranger provided boats to all the Bassmaster Classic qualifiers forever. It's like every Bassmaster Classic I ever went to, except for the last one I fished at Lake Wiley, the one Takahiro Mori one, what would happen is the Bassmaster would fly you to the Bassmaster Classic, and when you got there, you had a fully rigged Ranger. We all had fully rigged Rangers, identically rigged in the parking lot with your name on it and your boat number. They were a title sponsor for the circuit forever, and that's gone away. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'll be curious, and we'll talk later. See you.